Journalists in Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Ministerial Task Team in the Northwest, briefing the media and indeed the country, Karima Brown, on what is actually happening in the Northwest. The President saying the ministers must remain seized was the word she used until all the issues are resolved. Good to have you with us. So the government clearly taking this very, very seriously. They're sending out all their ministers. They must now go do their homework and report back. But before we talk about the various ministers, I'd heard finance, justice, social, we'd also heard state security, etc., etc. Health seems to be the big one. And they talk about this section 101A, section 101B. And you were talking to me about this off air. Just break that down for me.
Yes, so what section 100 allows is, of course, for the autonomous province, because as you know, we've got cooperative governance, so we've got spheres of government, so there's a lot of equality in many ways. As you know, there's concurrent powers on things like education and health. So section 100 allows the national government to literally almost sequestrate, if you like, the province, and they've done that. But then the Constitution under section 100A allows then for the national ministers to make sure that the provincial government, applies the law consistently, but they do it cooperatively with the existing province. What section B does is that it allows the national government to take over the functions completely and is in fact then obligated to carry out that functions. And what Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma said is that of the departments affected, health has already been put under section 100B because of the severity of the problem. And we of course know that that is in part because of that fake ambulance contract that is apparently linked to a company in India linked to the Guptas. So what essentially she's saying now is after the ministers, the various ministers who have equivalent departments in the Northwest have met with the different departments, they will have to make an assessment around whether they are going to co-govern with the MECs, the particular departments, to ensure that there is an adherence to things like the PMFA, that there's an adherence to national norms and standards, or if the situation is extremely bad, as it is in the case of health, they invoke section B, section 100B, which allows then the national ministers to almost take direct control and exercise that control.
And we saw some of that control, or at least some of the damage control, maybe I might go as far as that, in the Hawu strike earlier. We were taking it live. We saw the health minister himself, Aaron Motsoaledi, standing up, receiving that memorandum of demands. That is how seriously they're taking it. He said on air, addressing those union members, he's been sent there by the IMC. So that is speaking to exactly what you were saying, how seriously they're taking health.
Not just seriously, it means he is physically responsible and legally and constitutionally responsible. What the other ministers now are going to do is to look at, for example, where the transport needs the same intervention, where the section 100B needs to be invoked. That means the MECs in that department then become subservient to the national ministers. Section 100A gets the national ministers and these MECs to cooperate. But what is very interesting is that section B only comes into play if there is a failure on the part of the provincial government to in fact comply with those norms and standards which the national government needs to make clear that it is going to be administered. So in a very short space of time, Gareth, we're going to see just the extent of the collapse essentially of the Northwest province as a government. And I think that is going to be a very important marker in terms of just where this is going to go. Already we know that taps have been turned off. The Treasury, for example, has been put under national control, which means that monies that are going to be spent gets decided in Pretoria and not in Mahikeng. And that is an important part of it. And of course, this is not the first time that a province is put under this kind of control. We saw in Limpopo 5 departments previously, and of course in the Eastern Cape, similar departments or fewer departments province. But I think this is the first time that an entire province is subjected to this process. And what President Cyril Ramaphosa is very careful with is to comply to the letter and the spirit of the Constitution because of the way in which corporate governance in South Africa works. So essentially, the ministers are going to be making an assessment, and then they get to either invoke Section 100A or Section B. And like I said, health is already under Section B because it's in a state of complete collapse. Now, here's the thing. The Treasurer General, Mokgojane Dondo, recently said at a conference that fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the Northwest jumped in a space of just about a year from 2 billion to 14 billion. Now that gives you the extent, Gareth, of what we are dealing with. We've just had a story where it looks like a corrupt deal between the Northwest and SA Express, totaling 407 million rand involved, is also at stake. So the stakes couldn't be higher here.
No, they could not be. And I think this is when you start to break down SA Express and all these other deals. You come up to these staggering and very worrying numbers very quickly. Karima, is this perhaps a too simplistic way of looking at it? A lot of this seems to be centralized around one man and those that he controlled. The now taking leave of absence, the Premier Supra Mahumapelo. The obvious question, a lot of people who may not be political analysts are wondering, why is he still there? Once you get rid of him, does everything else not then follow suit? Why is he doing this?
Yes, I think what is important to realize, the other thing that is also important is out of the 18 municipalities in the Northwest, you heard Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma saying they visited 2 municipalities to also see how that has functioned, because the failure in the Northwest has largely been at municipal level. Already 12 of that 18 municipalities are in fact already under the national direction of the Minister of Cooperation and Traditional Affairs, Dr. Zwelin Kize. And so he's going to be one of the critical ministers that must make that decision whether the municipalities there is going to be under Section 100A or Section 100B.